Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like if you enjoyed true historical stories told with cinematic detail and realism. Your support helps the channel continue bringing forgotten moments of history back to life for millions of viewers around the world. And now, prepare yourself for one of the darkest and most shocking mornings in American history. On the morning of December 7th, 1941, the people of Hawaii woke up expecting an ordinary Sunday. Sailors aboard massive American battleships prepared for breakfast. Some young soldiers were writing letters home to their families. Others were sleeping after long shifts, enjoying one of the few peaceful mornings they had experienced in weeks. The skies above Pearl Harbor were calm, the ocean was quiet, and there was almost no sign that history itself was about to change forever. But hundreds of miles away, hidden beyond the horizon, one of the most dangerous naval strike forces ever assembled was moving silently toward Hawaii. Within minutes, explosions would rip through the harbor, warships would burn beneath enormous pillars of smoke, and thousands of Americans would suddenly find themselves trapped inside a living nightmare. The attack on Pearl Harbor would become one of the most important turning points of the 20th century. In less than 2 hours, the United States would suffer devastating losses. More than 2,000 Americans would die. Battleships would sink into the harbor. Airfields would be destroyed. Families across the nation would wake up to horrifying radio broadcasts announcing that America had been attacked without warning. And almost overnight, the United States would enter the Second World War. But the story of Pearl Harbor did not begin on that Sunday morning. To truly understand why Japan launched such a risky and devastating attack, it is necessary to go back several years before the bombs first fell on Hawaii. During the 1930s, Imperial Japan was rapidly expanding across Asia. Japanese military leaders believed their nation needed to dominate the Pacific region in order to survive and become a world power. The Japanese Empire invaded parts of China with extraordinary brutality, capturing major cities and committing atrocities that shocked much of the world. At the same time, Japan's military government became increasingly convinced that conflict with the United States was inevitable. American leaders watched Japan's expansion with growing concern. The United States had important economic and military interests throughout the Pacific, and many feared Japan's ambitions threatened the balance of power in the region. As Japanese forces continued invading neighboring territories, the United States responded with economic sanctions designed to weaken Japan's military capabilities. One of the most damaging actions came when America restricted oil exports to the Japanese Empire. This decision created enormous panic within Japanese leadership circles because Japan depended heavily on imported oil to fuel its navy, air force, and industry. Without those resources, Japan feared it could not sustain its military operations for long. Inside secret meetings in Tokyo, military strategists debated what to do next. Some believed diplomacy could still prevent war, while others argued Japan needed to act quickly before American economic pressure completely crippled the empire. Eventually, Japanese military leaders concluded that if war with the United States could not be avoided, then Japan needed to strike first and strike hard. Their goal would be to destroy America's ability to fight effectively in the Pacific before the United States could fully mobilize its enormous industrial power. One of the central figures behind the attack plan was Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. Yamamoto was an experienced naval commander who understood the risks of fighting the United States better than almost anyone else in Japan. He had studied in America and knew the incredible strength of American industry and manufacturing. Yamamoto reportedly warned that Japan might achieve temporary victories in the early stages of war, but he doubted Japan could win a prolonged conflict against the United States. Even so, he believed that if Japan launched a sudden surprise attack capable of crippling the U.S. Pacific Fleet, it might buy enough time for Japan to secure control over large parts of Asia and the Pacific. The plan that emerged was bold, dangerous, and unlike anything attempted before. Japan assembled a massive strike force centered around aircraft carriers, which at the time represented a revolutionary new form of naval warfare. Hundreds of aircraft were prepared for the mission, including torpedo bombers, dive bombers, and fighter planes. Pilots trained relentlessly for months, practicing precision attacks against ships and low-altitude torpedo runs. Japanese planners studied Pearl Harbor carefully, analyzing photographs, naval intelligence, and the layout of American defenses. As the operation moved closer to execution, secrecy became absolutely critical. The Japanese fleet sailed across the northern Pacific under strict radio silence, hoping to avoid detection until the final moment. Sailors aboard the ships understood they were participating in a mission that could change world history forever. Many carried a mixture of fear, excitement, and determination as they crossed the cold waters of the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, diplomatic negotiations between Japan and the United States continued in Washington, creating the illusion that peace might still be possible. Back in Hawaii, life continued almost normally. American military commanders knew tensions with Japan were increasing, but most believed any Japanese attack would likely target Southeast Asia or the Philippines rather than Hawaii itself. Pearl Harbor seemed too far away and too heavily defended to become the primary target of a surprise attack. That assumption would prove disastrous. In the early hours of December 7th, the Japanese strike force launched its aircraft toward Hawaii. Pilots climbed into the skies carrying bombs and torpedoes designed specifically to destroy American warships anchored inside the harbor. As dawn approached, the first wave of aircraft moved toward Pearl Harbor under the cover of morning light. Many of the pilots understood they were about to begin one of the most important military operations in Japanese history. At approximately 7:48 in the morning, the attack began. The peaceful skies above Pearl Harbor suddenly erupted with the sound of aircraft engines, explosions, and machine gun fire. Japanese planes swept across the harbor, dropping bombs onto battleships and military installations, while torpedoes slammed into the sides of American ships. Within moments, enormous explosions tore through the harbor as smoke and fire rose into the sky. For many American servicemen, confusion came before fear. Some initially believed the explosions were part of a military exercise. Others rushed outside only to witness aircraft bearing the red insignia of Imperial Japan flying directly overhead. Realization spread rapidly across the harbor. America was under attack. One of the main targets was Battleship Row, where several powerful American battleships were anchored side by side. The USS Arizona became the site of one of the deadliest moments of the attack when a Japanese armor-piercing bomb penetrated the ship and detonated inside its ammunition magazine. The resulting explosion was catastrophic. A massive fireball erupted from the ship, instantly killing more than 1,000 sailors and Marines. The blast was so powerful that debris was launched hundreds of feet into the air, while the battleship quickly sank beneath the burning waters of the harbor. Nearby, the USS Oklahoma suffered multiple torpedo strikes and began rolling over. Hundreds of sailors became trapped inside the overturned ship as seawater flooded through the hull. Some trapped men desperately banged on the metal walls from inside, hoping rescuers could hear them before oxygen ran out. Rescue crews worked frantically under dangerous conditions to save as many sailors as possible, but for many it was already too late. Across the harbor, chaos consumed nearly every corner of the naval base. American anti-aircraft guns opened fire at incoming aircraft, while sailors rushed through smoke-filled corridors trying to rescue wounded comrades. Airfields such as Hickam Field and Wheeler Field came under heavy attack as Japanese fighters destroyed rows of parked American aircraft before many pilots even had a chance to take off. Explosions shook the ground, while terrified servicemen searched desperately for cover. Despite the overwhelming surprise and destruction, acts of extraordinary courage emerged throughout Pearl Harbor that morning. Countless servicemen risked their lives to save others while continuing to fight back against the attacking Japanese aircraft. One of the most famous examples was Doris Miller aboard the USS West Virginia. Miller was originally assigned as a mess attendant and had not been formally trained to operate anti-aircraft weapons. Yet during the attack, he carried wounded sailors to safety and eventually manned a machine gun, firing at enemy aircraft while explosions and flames surrounded him. His bravery later earned him the Navy Cross and made him one of the most recognized American heroes of the attack. Elsewhere, medical teams worked under horrifying conditions to treat the wounded. Hospital staff struggled to keep up as wave after wave of injured servicemen arrived with severe burns, shrapnel wounds, and traumatic injuries. Smoke covered the harbor, while thick oil spread across the water. Some men escaped burning ships only to find themselves swimming through flaming fuel floating on the surface of the harbor. Survivors later described the sounds of collapsing steel, screaming sailors, and endless explosions echoing through the smoke-filled air. The Japanese attack unfolded in two major waves. The second wave intensified the destruction, targeting additional ships, airfields, and military infrastructure. By this point, American defenses had begun responding more effectively. Anti-aircraft fire filled the skies above Pearl Harbor while surviving American pilots attempted to engage the attacking aircraft. Even so, the damage had already become catastrophic. Yet despite the scale of destruction, several critical American assets survived the attack. Most importantly, the U.S. aircraft carriers assigned to the Pacific Fleet were not present at Pearl Harbor that morning. These carriers would later become decisive weapons during the Pacific War. Fuel storage facilities and repair yards also escaped major destruction, allowing the United States Navy to recover faster than Japanese commanders expected. By around 10 o'clock in the morning, the attack was over. Japanese aircraft disappeared into the distance, leaving behind a shattered harbor consumed by fire, smoke, and destruction. Battleships lay sinking in the water. Aircraft wreckage covered the airfields. Thousands of Americans were dead or wounded. For the survivors, the true scale of the disaster was only beginning to become clear. News of the attack spread rapidly across the United States. Radio broadcasts interrupted regular programming as reporters delivered shocking updates from Hawaii. Families gathered around radios in fear and disbelief, while newspapers rushed to print emergency editions describing the devastation at Pearl Harbor. Across the country, Americans struggled to comprehend how such a devastating attack could have happened without warning. The following day, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt addressed Congress in one of the most famous speeches in American history. Roosevelt described December 7, 1941, as a date which will live in infamy. His speech captured the anger, grief, and determination spreading throughout the nation. Almost immediately, Congress voted to declare war on Japan. Within days, Germany and Italy also declared war on the United States, fully drawing America into the Second World War. The attack on Pearl Harbor transformed American society almost overnight. Millions of men enlisted in the armed forces while factories expanded production on a scale never before seen in human history. American industry began producing ships, tanks, aircraft, weapons, and supplies at astonishing speed. What had once seemed like a distant conflict occurring overseas suddenly became deeply personal for millions of Americans. For Japan, the attack initially appeared to be a stunning military success. Battleships had been sunk or damaged, airfields devastated, and American forces caught almost completely by surprise. Yet some Japanese leaders understood the enormous danger that still lay ahead. Admiral Yamamoto reportedly feared that Japan had awakened a sleeping giant. Whether those exact words were spoken remains debated by historians. But the meaning reflected a growing realization that the United States would now fight the war with overwhelming determination and industrial power. As the war continued, Pearl Harbor became a symbol of both tragedy and resilience. American forces eventually pushed back across the Pacific in brutal battles such as Midway, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. The conflict would continue for nearly 4 more years before finally ending in 1945 after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Today, the USS Arizona Memorial stands above the remains of the sunken battleship at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Visitors from around the world travel there to honor the men who died during the attack. Beneath the water, oil still slowly rises from the wreckage of the Arizona, often referred to as the tears of the Arizona. It remains a haunting reminder of the lives lost on that terrible morning. For the survivors who lived through Pearl Harbor, the memories never completely disappeared. Many carried emotional scars for the rest of their lives. Some remembered the flames rising above the harbor. Others remembered the friends they lost or the terrifying sounds of bombs exploding around them. And many remembered the realization that in a single morning, the world they once knew had changed forever. Pearl Harbor remains one of the defining moments of the 20th century. It was a story of shock, sacrifice, courage, destruction, and transformation. In less than 2 hours, the attack reshaped the future of the United States and changed the course of World War II forever. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more true stories from history, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. And tell us in the comments which historical event you would like to see next here on Chronicles Untold. Thank you for watching.